Well, good morning and happy Monday to you. Hope you're doing well and having a great day. Beautiful day in the township. Obligatory weather report. You probably notice I'm not in my usual space. I'm in Gathering Grounds, which is one of my favorite rooms in the church. I just love what the folks who took this space over have done with it. It is probably used more than any other room in the church. In fact, I can almost guarantee that. And I love being in here and doing some studying and some working. And this morning I'm here because I've got other people in my office and needed a little quiet time to do our MMQB. So again, I'm glad you're with me. Bible, need that. And if you have not yet worshiped yesterday, go back and give that some of your time. It's about a 25 minute message as always. This morning I've already graduated from coffee to water, and I found some supplies from our Thursday church. This is called Smart Food, and I'm eating this, and it's not working. I don't feel any smarter, but I'm going to keep on eating it. Hey, we're in Galatians chapter 3. A little bit of housekeeping before we move into this. It'll be a little shorter MMQB. I'm trying to not just recap the sermon, but actually add some different thoughts. And so this won't be as long as our normal one, and we'll see what you think about the format. But I did want to respond to a couple of questions related to my having an F in preaching. I didn't end up getting an F. I was able to bring it up. But the reason I had an F at the midterm was my professor insisted on me producing a manuscript for my sermons. And I've never preached from a manuscript, don't intend to, unless I get to the point where I can't memorize my notes or memorize certain concepts, and I guess then I might. But he and I went round and round about the value of a manuscript. And he said, how can I grade you if I don't have your material in front of me? And we came to a meeting of the minds, and he was the boss and I was not. And so I learned how to do a manuscript very briefly, but never have used one since. So that's why my buddy's dad, Dr. Huey, gave me an F for the first half of my first semester of preaching. Anyhow, it was good to have him in worship yesterday. All right, Galatians chapter 10. I started out, of course, don't want to get into the whole cinnamon thing and all that, but I do have fun with those little vignettes that I find and little examples and illustrations and anecdotes. And but I did make this statement that the text was going to sound very Jewish to us. And what I meant by that was there's a lot of conversation about Abraham and the law is a curse. And that doesn't resonate with many of us because we've never lived under the law. And hopefully we were able to make that jump yesterday from the early Christian church having conflict over barriers being placed or obstacles being placed in people's path that would hinder them from having access. And I wanted to use the word access yesterday, and I haven't gone back to watch yet, but that was the word I wanted. Access was being limited and controlled by human hands and human hearts. And that's not God's design for our faith. God desires for each of us to enter into this relationship with Jesus Christ, and our behavior, our lifestyle flows out of that. And what was happening in the early church was the Judaizers, those who were trying to impose Jewish law and Jewish custom on these non-Jewish believers, were limiting access to Jesus and saying it's all about what you do, and if you'll do these things first, then you have access to him. Our faith teaches us that once we enter into this relationship with him, we then want to obey him as a matter of the heart, not a matter of rule keeping. And I don't know if I spelled that out, but hopefully that helps. All right, Galatians chapter 10. We noted yesterday the connection between Galatians chapter 3, verse 10. In fact, why don't you go ahead and read that? Go ahead and stop the video and give that a quick read. All right, start it back up. Things to note. The connection between the law and the curse. Again, the law refers to the 10 commandments given to Moses at Mount Sinai, and also all the other rules and regulations and smaller laws that the rabbis and priests imposed on the people. And Paul was noting that if you're relying on that, you see the word rely, all who rely on observing the law are under a curse. If you're relying on that law to make you justified in the eyes of God, good luck. Why good luck? He goes on, quoting Deuteronomy chapter 27, cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. Things to notice here. First of all, the word continue to. It's not a one-time thing. So just because you and I might get it right once or get one little thing right, we have to continue in that. And of course, that's a curse because we can't possibly satisfy all those laws. And then he also notes you have to do everything written in the book of the law, not just 99%, everything. And so the point is that Paul's making, if a human being cannot keep every ounce, every jot and tittle of the law, he or she is cursed because there are consequences to breaking the law. He's setting up this conversation he wants to have within the church with the Judaizers and the Gentile Christians, saying, listen, it's not about keeping the law. No, it's actually about entering into a relationship with Jesus Christ through faith. Verse 11, go ahead. Stop the video and give it a read. Verse 11, what did we note yesterday? Let's take a look at it again. Clearly, he says that clearly, no one is justified before God by the law. In other words, obviously, we can all attest, we just can't follow all the rules. The righteous will live by faith. And so he's not saying that the law was a bad thing. I don't think he's saying that here. What he's saying is that if we are relying on ourselves and our own strength to satisfy the law, we're under a curse because the only way we're righteous is through faith. We are justified by God's grace through faith. And so we receive his grace by believing God. And so, we used a couple of examples yesterday. God knew we were going to break the law. He knew we were going to sin. And so he set up this sacrificial system to atone for sin. Okay, you do something really bad, you make this sacrifice. You do something kind of sort of bad, you make this sacrifice. You violate this rule, you make that sacrifice. Over and over again, that's what God does. I'm not saying that the law is a bad thing. And Paul is not either. The Ten Commandments are a gift because when we look at the Ten Commandments, I used the image yesterday of a mirror. We see the perfection and the holiness of God, and we see our own imperfection. I cannot possibly live up to these standards. I can't do that as a fallen human being. But the value is they do give us God's expectations and God's boundaries. And so we used different examples yesterday. A thermometer, it will tell you that you have a fever. It will not make the fever go away. The law will tell you what God expects, but it won't make you obedient to it. Does that make sense? That's where I wanted to go. And then we mentioned yesterday, and I think it's so interesting, get back into Galatians chapter 3 and go all the way back to chapter 2, verse 6. And you'll see that essentially Paul says, let me give you an example of someone who was righteous by faith and not the law. And he uses Abraham, which is perfect. Perfect. Because Abraham, he's the first of the patriarchs, he's their guy, but Abraham did not obey the law because there was no law for him to obey. Isn't that an interesting insight? And yet God counted him as righteous. Why? He believed God. You see that there in chapter 2, verse 6. Didn't believe in God. We know he did. But he trusted God. When you and I start thinking about, what does God want from me? How am I going to be righteous in God's eyes? We believe him. When he says, this is the lifestyle I want for you, we believe him. When he says, if you will do this, I will be pleased with it, and also you will flourish and thrive, we believe him. When God calls us, maybe here at the church, into a certain type of ministry and says, if you do this, I'll bless you. And I'll bless others through you. We believe God. That's what righteousness is. It is believing in God and believing God. It's a matter of faith and it's a matter of trust. That's a mouthful. Think about it with me. Does that make sense to you? I just think it does. as we look at who Abraham was and what he did. I had a screen for verse 12. Didn't like the screen, but what I tried to say was, again, for me, as I back off and think, what does this mean for me personally? It's a matter of whom do I trust? Do I trust God or do I trust myself? Because if I'm going to say I can be made right in God's eyes by being a good guy and being a good person, I can't be a good guy or a good person enough to satisfy that law. And so who do you trust? You know, if we could satisfy God's law and be righteous on our own, why did Jesus come and die on the cross? Didn't have to. Interesting insights that Paul's giving here. But again, who are you going to trust and who are you going to believe? Verse 13, really important. So go ahead and read verse 13, stop the video, and get back with me. Big time information here. It's so important for you and me to understand. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law. To redeem, what did we say yesterday? Think of the image of someone who is a slave being purchased out of slavery and given his or her freedom. We have been purchased, we've been redeemed from the curse of the law. In other words, the consequence of not being perfect, the consequences of not being righteous or holy on our own, God has purchased that. He's redeemed us in Jesus Christ. He became the curse for us. So think about that. He took upon his own body, his own life, your sins and my sins. He became a curse. I just think that's a fascinating insight, isn't it? For it is written, and this is a quote from Deuteronomy 21, "Cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree." And we use the imagery again of a family walking through the town. Someone has committed a capital offense. He or she has been executed. Typically he has been executed, and his corpse is hung on a tree so that moms and dads can say, you see with that man up there? You don't want that for your life. You don't want that. That is the consequence of a capital offense of breaking the law. Jesus was hung on a wooden cross. He became the curse for you and me. And what I wanted to, if you were to ask me, Sean, what did you really want to communicate yesterday? I would say I wanted to communicate that life with God is not about our own strength or our own works or our own goodness. It's about what he has done for us. And that faith is trusting him to the point that we can be joyful and rejoice. We have access to him. We don't have to live with this deep sense of guilt or shame. We don't have to be burdened by, I just don't measure up and I'm upset that she doesn't measure up either. Don't have to do that. God has said, you're set free from all that. Enjoy life with me. Obedience is something that you want, not something you do out of fear or obligation. And so be joyful. It's like, I remember we were on a vacation with my sister one time, and her little boys were playing, doing a zip line. And she was like, are you having fun? And I'm like, if you have to ask if they're having fun, they probably aren't. Yes, they're having fun. Enjoy life. You can't force yourself to have fun. Just do the things out of a relationship with God that bring you great joy. I'm getting tongue twisted, which means I'm going too long. You have a great day, a great week, and I will look forward to the next MMQB. And so, bye for now.